Good afternoon or good evening. This is Jeff. It's about 7:30 here in the Pacific Northwest. I'm sitting in my chair here. I got my pillow behind my back. I'm doing okay. I've just been thinking about the primary results here in Washington State, and I want to address something that I've been meaning to talk about. Now I'm going to talk about it. You've seen me post online a couple of different times that I have a big problem with the Republican Party. I'm a conservative. I believe in the platform that the Republican Party represents. I just don't believe in the representation that we in the citizenry get from the Republican Party. Now, let me explain that. And I want to say, first of all, I'm not angry about this. I'm not mad. I'm not bent out of shape. I'm not your quote unquote black angry man. I've just had some problems with the Republican Party for a long time. I watched this video here. It's called Uncle Tom by Larry Elder. I met Larry Elder. Some of you have heard me talk about that. I've known about Larry Elder for 30 years. I knew he was an independent, conservative mind, but I never really listened to him. Until about a couple of years ago, and he was keying in on everything that is dear to me, everything. And then I read this book, Unfounded Loyalty by Reverend Wayne Perryman. Both of these gentlemen are black. They happen to be American. And this book here cataloged everything that I'd researched. So when I read this book, in fact, somebody sent me Wayne's book in 2004, I think it was, because I'd been talking about virtually everything that's in this book. You see, when I learned that the Republican Party was the party that ended the slave trade, when I learned that, it fought for the right for women to vote, the 13th, 14th, 15th Amendment for black folks, when I watched the civil rights movement, both during the time of Abraham Lincoln through Frederick Douglass and people like Harriet Tubman and many, many blacks who were in government and also pursuing careers in government, I began to see all kinds of things that we weren't taught in the school system. So I started paying attention right up to the civil rights movement in the 1920s. And then later on, when the big lie is that it flipped in the 60s, most of the people that were voting, black folks that were voting, were Republicans. I remember walking down the road in the ghetto in Portland, if you can call that a ghetto, and these two black men had a picture of Martin Luther King, big billboard thing. It was during election season. And I hollered out the window at him and I said, "Did you guys know that he was a Republican?" And they were stunned. They said, "What you talking about? Come over here." So I pulled my car over into the parking lot and I began to show them that he was a Republican. So here's why I'm making this video. I had several conversations today with some good friends of mine. You got to understand, I live in a predominantly white community, and I walked into a Republican office a year and a half ago and said I wanted to be a PCO and I need to learn the process. I didn't know what to expect, but it's not the first time I walked into a Republican office. I remember, I remember when George Bush was running for office. I went out to a Republican office in Tigard, Oregon, and I walked in there and I saw these white college kids. They had on these suits and ties. These girls, they had sundresses on. I felt like I was looking at Doris Day in the 50s. That's what it felt like. It was sanitized. Meanwhile, the Democrats were over there in the ghettos and in the Latino communities, having the same message to the same people. It's never changed. But they're down and dirty. They're not sitting in an ivory tower, if you will. Their masters are. But the Democrat people out on the field, they're not. And I used to think, how come the Republicans aren't over here in the ghettos? How come they don't have any offices in the ghetto? How come they're not representing the Latino community? Where's the Asian community when we talk about the Republican Party? So if I was a Democrat and I looked at this and I was asking these questions, I would say, that's true. The Republican Party doesn't talk to people like Thomas Sowell, doesn't give Walter Williams a platform, doesn't give Larry Elders the time of day, if you will. They're not over in the ghettos doing that. You know what? We have a perfect opportunity as a Democrat to turn this party into a bunch of old white men. And that's what they did. And the Republicans allowed that to happen because they didn't really fight. It's kind of like the Republican leadership here in the state of Washington. I call them the little stepbrother of the Democrat machine that controls Washington state. So this is why I said I don't particularly like the Republican Party and the leadership. I like what it represented. I like what it stood for. But today's Republican Party, like the little stepbrother of Hillary Clinton, in my opinion. Sure, you have some warriors out there. You have a handful. See, something happens when you go to Washington, D.C. to represent us. You end up becoming part of the swamp. And the Republican Party is part of the swamp. Period. Let me ask you a question here in Washington State. They propped up Raul Garcia and got behind him. He's a Trump hater. Nothing about him was attractive. And yet that's where the money went in the state of Washington. The candidates who represent the core of the Republican Party, they're pushed out here in the state of Washington. Really don't have a voice. You know, there's people out here trying to fight that, to change it, to maybe even resurrect the Republican Party that was in the trenches. So I was talking to a couple people. I never want to not do nothing. But as I talk about the Republican Party, I'm usually angry and uptight as opposed to 100% behind the Republican Party. I don't donate to the Republican Party like I would like to because they don't represent me like I need them to. So I have problems with the Republican leadership, whether it be in the state of Washington or whether it be on a national level. Because if you look at the Republican Party on a national level, you don't see any. You don't see the gay and lesbian community represented in the Republican Party. You don't see the black community represented in the Republican Party. You don't see the Asian community represented. You don't see a variety of people represented. That's absolutely true. You have a handful here and one or two over here, one or two back there, and a couple that we don't know about. I watched how West was treated when he was a congressman. I watched how they treated him. Didn't give him front and center. So I look at that and I go, okay. It would be an easy thing for me to say, well, the Republican Party is full of privileged white folks. No. There's a lot of folks out here in the Republican Party that are not white folks, that are not privileged, but they don't have a voice. When I watched this movie, Uncle Tom, and I saw in the movie Larry Elder parade a lot of black folks that I'm very familiar with. Most of the black community doesn't know him, doesn't even talk about him. And the Republican Party doesn't promote these people. So if I were to look at the Republican Party and can say to them that you remind me of the little brother of the Democrat Party as opposed to the platform of the Republican Party. That's what you remind me of. So I have some problems with the Republican Party. I really do. I'm a conservative. I'm not a moderate. I'm a believer. I'm not a non-believer. But where's our representation, folks? Who's representing us in the Republican Party? Didn't happen here in the state of Washington. The state of Washington toed the line, if you will. And then you have Eastern Washington. They look at King County here, and this is probably true in some of your communities. I know it's certainly true down in Oregon. They look at this populated county, King County, Mountain Number down there, and they feel defeated, so they don't even participate. And yet, if they participated, and if we knew about those people, we would win every race. So I was talking to a couple of people. How can we change that? What can we do about that? You know, you can go out into the community and ask a bunch of people for some money so you can put some videos together. But the bottom line is how many of you in the state of Washington saw the Asian community in full force get behind the Republican Party, get behind the conservative movement, and stand for the Constitution of the United States of America? You don't see them. I don't even know black conservatives here in the state of Washington. I know you're out there, but you don't have a voice in the political arena. You're not cohesive. We're not together. I don't see the black community that's Republican and the Asian community and the Latino community, and yes, even the gay and lesbian community that do not have the values of the Democrat leadership here in the state. I don't know who you people are. We're not together. So something has to change with the makeup of the Republican Party. The voices that are not being heard and the people who feel like their vote doesn't matter, those are the people we got to talk to. When you talk to a black person who didn't know the history that I know, and then they start voting for conservative values, those people need to be known. They need to be represented. They need to be promoted. So I'm trying to raise some money to put together a couple of videos to go out and meet those folks. Now, I have values, biblical values. Okay, there is a lot of people in this nation who don't. But they do have conservative values. They do believe in limited government. They do believe in the Declaration of Independence and the U.S. Constitution. Those are the people that we need to be talking to. Those are the people that the Republican Party needs to represent. They don't. So I'm not a fan of the Republican Party. I think to a large degree, on the whole, the Republican Party nationwide is weak, doesn't assert its voice, doesn't command a position, and goes after the people who do within the party. Excuse me? See, that's a problem. And that's why we lose. The black community, the Latino community, the Native American community, the Asian community, where in this election season are you seeing those people represented? Have you talked to those people? Have you seen any of those people in the media? No, you don't. And then the other problem I have with the Republican Party is they're always talking about double standard, hypocritical positions. You know, that's so old, that's so tired. I'm so tired of hearing that. We know that the Democrat Party would sell off half of this country in order to maintain power. We know that. We know that they don't have a platform that's worth a darn. And yes, I want to say another word. We know that. This is why they're doing all of the things that they can possibly think of to stop Donald Trump. Because they don't have any other way to defeat him. So you have the media, you have the political arena, you have that high-tech community, Facebook, all of them. They're all dismantling our society right in front of us. And we know about Facebook. We know about YouTube. We know about Twitter. But we don't know about the conservatives that are out there in the middle of nowhere who've kind of given up. We don't know about the ones that are your neighbors who don't even participate. We don't know about those people because they don't have a voice. And we need to change that. You know, Dino Rossi, I put a thing on here. Dino Rossi is a moderate. I mean, he's always has been. But he's right. If the people in Eastern Washington were cohesive and together, they'd defeat just about everything Democrats raised up. Everything, 22%. He's right. Versus 9% in King County. I mean, think about it. But the problem is, you all don't know each other. I don't know the Asian community that is conservative and that would support the U.S. Constitution in a vote. I don't know. I can count 5 or 6 black folks in the state of Washington that I know personally who are conservative and who have biblical values and believe like I do. 5. Gotta be more than that here. But see, the Republican Party isn't even talking about its constituency. They just want your vote. See, that's a problem. I'm going to try to raise some money. I got a couple of things that I'm working with. I'm working with David Pressman on an ideal that we have. I'm working with We Speak. I'm trying to raise some funds to do something so we can meet those people. And we got a general election coming up, folks. If the majority of the people that believe like I believe, or even come close to having that common bond, vote, we change the state of Washington. I really believe that. I really believe that. I had a very good friend who's a radio talk show host. If I said his name, you'd all know who he was instantly. I'm not going to do that. But he said, we don't have the bodies to change the state, to flip the state. That might be true on the western side of the mountain, but it's not true on the eastern side of the mountain. So why don't we go talk to the people on the eastern side of the mountain and encourage them? Why don't we do more than just say we don't have the bodies? We can't beat King County. Why don't we do something different in order to stand for our republic and honor the grant that God gave us when the United States of America was born? Why don't we do something different, folks? Because what the Republican Party presents and has done, here's the sum total of it. Getting his butt whooped all the time. When you can put a person like Joe Biden up for president, who I'm really beginning to understand there's probably some problems with him, but that doesn't matter to the Democrat Party. If they had a dead person that could talk, they'd put him up there, put a suit and tie on him, and put him in a basement. I'm just saying. So what I'm saying is we need to put our money, our time, our effort, and our voice into getting to know each other so that we know who is out there fighting the fight and we can represent one another. That's kind of what I think needs to happen. The conservative, Republican, who is against all of the Democrat ideals and platforms, we need to know one another. And we need to allow getting to know one another not cripple us because of certain positions we have in life. Now, you all know me. I'm couching my words very carefully here. But we live in a country where a vote and freedom and liberty are being taken away from us because we're fractured and broken and divided. That's what has to change. If we're going to fight the people who vote in the legislation that we're all being forced to live under, then we have to be unified, not as a political party, but as a commanding citizenry of these United States of America. We have to do that, or we're going to keep losing every single time. This is Jeff. I need your help, folks. I really do. I'm going to try to raise some money. I already got some things happening with production and videos, and I got to do something, and I need your help to do it, okay? As I sit here and nurse this lower back issue and all the different things that are going on, the primary race that we just endured here, it's telling a story. And that story is the people who don't appreciate the leadership of the state. We need to know one another. And we need to allow other people to know that you exist. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.